Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Quirky Inspirations. I have the absolute joy and pleasure of introducing to you the gorgeous Teresa K. Now, Teresa and I met on a networking meeting, and she's presently sitting in the US, so we're 12 hours apart. And Teresa's thing is helping women renew their leadership mindset with fresh fire and purpose. So Teresa, I'd love you to tell us a bit more about how you're mad, how you're making a difference in the world. Over to you.
Yes, well, thank you first and foremost, Wendy, for this opportunity to spend some time with you and your audience. I'm so excited to be here. So how am I changing the world right now? Well, after coming out of the education space for the past 17 years, one of the things I could share is that professional development or personal development has always been at the core of everything that I've done, regardless of what role that I've had. I love being able to pull out people's value and help them to understand exactly who they are, regardless of their age, whether they're little people or full-blown adults. But I find that right now in this particular part of my life, out of the last few years in the higher education space, I knew that I wanted to create a second career for myself. I had already started writing books. My Journey to Wholeness, The Sojourn Continue is a book series. And I was wondering, is there an opportunity for me to create a business or to create a second career as a writer, as an author, as a speaker? And I started working on that a few years ago before I came out of the education space. But one of the things that I learned, Wendy, was that I didn't necessarily have a message, even though I had my books and they were a foundation. I didn't really know what the core message was. And I had to go through some purpose development experiences myself to really be able to pull out a message. And what I have found when it comes to women in our leadership mindset, that it really does go back to something that's very simplistic, but absolutely majestic. And that is understanding the power of love and understanding that for women, that love really is our superpower. It really is our source. And so that is my message, that correlation between love and leadership and helping women to really understand, remind women of who they are. They already know who they are, especially women like ourselves who's already have significant years in our careers. But I do think that in our current culture, I don't know about where you are in Australia, but definitely here in the States, we have some very interesting things going on in our culture that seems to want to pull women backwards instead of projecting them forward. But what I'm really finding is that regardless of those things that's trying to oppress us, love is that superpower. Love is that revelation to help us, to remind us of who we are, that we are built, we're engineered for leadership, and is centered in love, because love has everything to do with how we navigate in life. Oftentimes, as women, we try to leave it at home as a softer side, softer emotion, because we want to prove that we're a boss in the workplace. But what we don't understand is that the power of love is what is going to help us to perform. It has everything to do with our decisions. It has everything to do with how we perceive. It has everything to do with how we create. It has everything to do with even how we create business. And whether we know it or not, as women, we will dysfunction without love. But with love, there is no limitation, and it supersedes any type of oppression that a society or even religion might try to place on us. So that is my mission. I want to be able to help women to renew their leadership mindset, employing the effective power of love and actually being able to utilize it as a skill set and as a competency.
Well, this is what you're saying. You're talking about a skill set and a competency. There will be people who'll be listening to this who are going, love's an emotion. What does that look like? Can you put some flesh on that for us, on that concept? What does it look like in practical terms to come from that position of love? Say in business.
Yes, so definitely in business, and I will have to share that I am faith-based in nature. I am a faith-based organization, but we're not going here. We're not going to church tonight, but we are going to use some inspiration. What I have found, and I know that we've all heard of it, about First Corinthians, that talks about all of the things that love is. Well, one of the things is that love has the ability to believe all things. So for business, what does that look like practically? Well, but to believe all things, our set of ideals, which is our vision, our mission, our core values, or our overall goals, those are love expressions as far as what the company imagines to be possible. So if we can ensure that we have our belief system, whether regardless of what our vision is, people got to believe you, and they have to be able to, it ensures buy-in when we take the time to confirm that our personal beliefs are in alignment with our culture, the culture that we establish in our businesses. It is aligned in the type of pool of talent that we're actually hiring, because we want to make sure that our teams reflect what we say that we believe. We also need to make sure that it's implemented in our action plans as well as in our goods or our services. So that's just one way of how love is practical, how we can practically make sure that love is built into our business models. Another one is that love has the ability to be kind. So that is just plain old respect. Let's call it what it is. It's just kindness, but it's just kindness with brand, kindness with our teams, also showing kindness to our stakeholders. So in order to maintain kindness, or that demonstration of love in our business models, that we have to be sure that we put certain things in place to protect and to set boundaries for our teams as well as for our stakeholders. So that's making sure that we have the appropriate policies in place. That's making sure that we are providing the right type of professional developments as well as trainings. And it also means making sure that if kindness gets out of whack, if we don't know how to be kind, that they're actually reporting measures that will protect your team and that will make sure, give them a safe place to be able to make sure that they can come forth and share when something is out of order. And I would just say another way to practically understand how to implement love into our business model is understanding that love has the ability to bear or to support all things. So love knows how to bear, it knows how to support. So in order to be able to enhance our organization's performance as well as our team's morale, we should be able to support our teams by actually building trust relationships. And those trust relationships will provide the opportunity for leaders to give their teams autonomy, to understand that you didn't just hire them for nothing. You got to trust their abilities, sometimes trust their judgment, absolutely give them procedures to follow, absolutely have a job requirement exactly, but also give them some room so that they can grow, and also making sure that they have access to continued development and growth within the organization, and also providing that livable wage. We can say what we want to, but if we're going to give 40 plus hours of our time to an organization and to another organization's beliefs and values and vision, then we also as leaders need to make sure that we're compensating our teams appropriately and making sure that they have the livable wage so that they can support themselves and everyone that they love. So those are just a few examples. Of course, there's more, but those are just a few examples on how we can practically make sure that love is at the helm of our organization and that is implemented into our business models.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. Because I mean, what I'm hearing from you there is, I mean, an awful lot of, particularly in startups, will go through the do I really need all these policies and procedures in place? And I mean, coming almost from a compliance and watch my back intention and feeling around it. But what I'm hearing from you is you flipping it round and going, this is not about watching my back. This is not about compliance. This is actually about setting up a culture where, as you say, love is at the root of it, not from a wishy-washy, weak, soft skills, mushy stuff,
Yes.
but actually from a very strong position. Strength, as you say, bearing all things, and also that belief. And again, that comes down to the business owner being able to trust the people that they have hired to go do their own job without being micromanaged.
Absolutely.
Because we all don't appreciate that. But as you say, you've got the parameters in place to start with, almost like I work with a number of people who don't like to have their speeches worked out, which is fine. They like to be in the flow. And I go, yeah, riverbanks still maintain the flow of the river can go. You've still got to have the banks through which the river can flow. And what I'm hearing from you is, if that is in place, then absolutely you've got a wonderful basis for your great business.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Cool. So your target audience, you're working with women, you're working with women in business?
Yes, women in business or professional women. My goal is to be able to, as I grow, because I am still new in this space. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. So as I continue to grow, my vision is I have already worked with professional women. A lot of those women are faith-based in nature, but they're either working in the education space, they're working in the technology space, or any other type of industry. So those are some of the women that I've dealt with. So it's just really exciting about the opportunity. My goal is to be able, or my vision is to be able to be a trusted resource for professional as well as faith-based organizations that really champions women's upward mobility and success. So that we can truly have the room to make real impact in our global culture.
Yeah. So how do you see the difference between how, and I'm going to say the energy as opposed to necessarily the physical embodiment of masculine and feminine energy within the business environment, and by business or corporate? How do you see the two working differently? The reason I'm asking this is because I feel that there have been, over the years since the women's liberation movement, and God bless our foremothers, things have whipped right back the other way, so that now an awful lot of women are more masculine than the males in the way they react and the way they behave. So I'd be interested to get your take on how you see the masculine and the feminine energies within the business and the corporate world.
Well, I definitely agree with what you're saying. I just going back through my own personal experience, when I think about how I've been developed over the years, and it would usually be a group of women, we have always been developed on how to communicate with our brothers in the workplace, but they in turn don't necessarily know are trained the same way where they are supposed to be able to engage with women. And I think that we have been put in a box or conditioned to not show up as ourselves, that we're coming in as some type of archetype, and it's not necessary. My thing is that our men and women, and regardless of what you identify with, we're all still made equal as far as in physicality, as far as in intelligence. We might do things slightly different, but we're no less effective as leaders than anyone else. It just so happens that women have a special type of way of dealing with how we lead and how we operate in the workplace. And that's if we could finally show up as ourselves and not try to mock Bob or try to
Mhm.
mock Jamal on the other side, and actually be ourselves and actually understand that our voices has a place in the workplace. As soon as we understand that there are innate leadership abilities, regardless of roles,
Yeah.
regardless if you have a leadership position or not, women are innately built to either to motivate, to have a persuasive motivation. And so that's what I call the power, or what is called the power of equal drive. So women have that ability, that effective ability to be able to use persuasive motivation to influence as well as to bring about change.
Mhm.
As women, we also have that power of team building. I think we're a little bit more natural at that.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's because we're more natural as far as building families at home, or what that is, but we do have that ability. We have that empathy, we have the sociability that allows us to bring people around a particular common place. And we're also more aware of our colleagues, their feelings. And it also has something to do with our need or our ability to be able to want to build companionship. So we're actually able to team build a little bit better than our brothers. We also have that power of that assertiveness and resilience. Women don't have a problem, with rejection. We feel like we can go in a hole someplace, but there's something special about women. We're going to talk about it later about what that internal voice is,
Mhm.
but there's something about women that we have those mantras, or that we have, we're able to recover from rejection so much quicker, because we use our confident statements and we use our confident behaviors to help us snap back, so to speak. And we have that power of danger. So we're a little bit more risky. We would think our brothers are riskier, but women are actually willing to take more risk when it comes to the workplace. And so
Really?
we're a little bit
That
different.
for
So
me a bit. That you've piqued my curiosity. Unpack that a bit, would you? How are we more risk, not sort of almost enjoying the idea of taking risks rather than being risk averse?
well, I think it's because of women's high tolerance for pain. We don't mind being exposed to pain. It could even go back to our natural makeup, some of the pains that we go through, not to get into too much detail, but we're
Hormonal.
able to move through the the natural inclinations, things that happen in our body, that once a month, that visit from from
Mhm.
Flow. The fact that we're able to do that and still go on with our day. So women have more, where we have more of the ability to be exposed to either liability, to injury, to pain, or even loss. So it makes us, we have a willingness to take bigger risk, and greater risk. I think we just built that way, where we're able to harness a little bit more pain physically as well as in our natural world. Also, women, we move with a certain level of urgency. Let's get it done. Let's hit it. let's get it. So we have that impulse to help drive others, to constrain others around a particular goal or a common goal to take us forward. And also, women are just great visionaries. We always talk about the woman's intuition, or that gut feeling, but we as women, we have unusual discernment as well as foresight, and our brains are actually built for that. So we have different ratios of white and gray matter that helps us with our intuition, so to speak. So we're a
Mhm.
little bit more, have more vision. So I think that once we as women are comfortable with how we are built as natural leaders, we won't need that. We don't need to act like our brothers.
Yeah.
If we could just walk in and just talk and not ask for permission, not apologize, and to sit up and talk straight. We know how to do that.
Mm.
And my hope is that businesses and corporations would start to redesign their development to teach us how, more so, about how we could respect one another just a little bit more, that kindness, that plain respect, Even if you don't like the word love, it shows up as care. It shows up as value. It just shows up as respect and just giving a person the room to speak. So if we can design our trainings more so on how to get along versus training us on how to talk. Well, men only hears this, or men only hear that. Quit training us like that. We're not children, we're women.
Yeah.
And so I think that once we understand, though, I don't think that we have to come to the table ready and understanding exactly who we are and what we have to offer.
Yes, and that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I mean, we've both said that we have a little bit of life history, and my experience has been that, particularly here in Australia, men don't like taking orders from women. So if they are in a position where a woman is in leadership, maybe superior to them in a corporate situation, there's very often resistance there, because my understanding is it triggers memories of mothers or teachers. And sometimes the fellows have not had a particularly pleasant experience with either. So it's interesting to see how maybe you were saying about the fellows being taught how to interact with the women as well, because an awful lot of the personal development stuff has been for women to, as you said, take possession, take ownership of the fact that you have the right to sit around the table as well. And at the same time, I'm seeing a fair amount of resistance, particularly in, as they are colloquially known, the male, pale and stale upper echelons in business and in corporates. So that's something I'm wondering, would you have any vision for how that could be more equalized or ameliorated?
Yes. So as you were talking, an experience came back to mind when I first took a leadership position with my last employer. It was very different because when I first started with the organization many years ago, I actually came as in a support role. And so kind of coming up the ranks from support to actually leading, that wherein some of the people that I served when I was in the support role, I'm now the leader at that location. That was odd, to say the least. But I found that it was different with navigating with my brothers during that particular space. And it was one particular gentleman that it felt like he wanted, every time he said something to me, he was like, he would always lead off, well, since you're supposed to be the one in charge, or since you're supposed to be whatever. Now, and I never appreciated that particular, I never liked that come off. I mean, just tell you up front, I didn't like to come off. And there was one particular time where all of the team was gathered together. And it felt like it was something he wanted to get off his chest. And he felt the need to get it off his chest in front of everyone in an accusatory way of that I did not do my job. And so I found myself, he wouldn't look at me straight on. Now I'm feeling like, if you're going to tell me off, if you're going to be sitting beside me, at least give me the courtesy of looking at me in my face. I remember turning to him, looking straight at him. And I just let him do what he was going to do. I didn't even raise my voice. I didn't try to interject. I just sat still for a second. And then I began to ask him questions, because I was like, here is my responsibility. This is what I am responsible for. And this is what I have done. Now, are you telling me that you didn't receive this information, or that I didn't get your information correct? So he ended up having to go back and to look. because help me to understand what it was that I was supposed to have gotten out of order.
Yes.
And I thought what was interesting is that he later on came back to whisper an apology. Now, you wanted to tell me off in front of everybody, but now you want to whisper the apology and to come back in private to apologize. That I didn't care less about that.
Mm-hmm.
But when I found what opened the door was I told him, I appreciate your feedback. Thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for giving me some additional insight that's going to help me to grow and develop. But what I did then was, how would you like to support? How would you support this particular thing? What would you like to do? Or what do you believe that will help this particular experience to be better? And then he looked at me like, what? No, because you're not going to just sit here. If we're going to get in here, let's get in here. So you're not just going to gripe. If you have a real grievance, then be prepared to bring a solution. So I was like, so what solution are you going to bring to make sure that we can improve? And how can I implement you actually into the program? What would you like to do to be a part of this program and to lead a particular area? Mm-hmm. So that's why I found, and I think it works for both men and women, mm-hmm. but I think particularly for men, I'm like, I'm not going to sit over your shoulder and watch you. I'm going to lay out the objectives. Here's the deadline. This mm-hmm. is what it needs to look like. Now I'm going to give you complete autonomy to make it happen. So other than checking in with me or whatever. So that's what I'm finding, is that inviting people, instead of just being sidelined, put them in the game and let them run the ball with a particular thing. Now that may not work for all, but I did find that I had a little bit more success when I said, how would you like, or what would you like, or what do you suggest, or what part of this would you like to orchestrate or to facilitate or to lead? Mm-hmm. And that's helped me be able to break down some of those barriers, and the relationship became a little bit more respectful.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine from his perspective, he's looking at him and going, she's done that. Ha! And feeling quite resentful of you. So the fact that you then turned it round and gave some kudos and some opportunity for him to show his leadership prowess. Oh, suddenly she's not so bad after all. Suddenly she's not a lot smart after all.
Absolutely.
I'm reminded also because we very often come to an interaction based on our history, rather than the interaction here and now in front of us. We're remembering the beat that we danced to previously. And I'm reminded of a colleague of mine, years ago. She came back as a speech pathologist, a new grad. She came back to work in the town where she had grown up. And she was sent to her own primary school. And there was a teacher there who remembered teaching her.
Yes.
And looked down on her and talked down to her as though she was still a child.
Yeah.
That was a real challenge for this therapist to go, I'm a qualified professional, and I would appreciate you speaking to me as a fellow professional. And the teacher did not know what to say, because she'd called her out on the fact that she was still dancing to the beat of 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
So it's that bringing people into the present and going, okay, give me what you got.
Absolutely. I mean, but even for the young lady that went into that space, she had to shift her head as well, and not to see herself as the little girl. I think that I struggled when I first stepped into the leadership position, because I was now leading on the same place that I was once support. Mm-hmm. So I never shifted my head, even though I was in a leadership position. I was leading, I was doing the work, I was functioning in the work, But in my own head, I never saw myself different. I still saw myself as in the support role. And I just want to say there's nothing wrong with the support role. I just want to
Yeah.
be clear on that, because it takes everyone to make a vision go forward. But when you're now in a position of leadership, you have to put that away. Even though I did remember and was able to I would say train and develop and to upskill my team of direct reports.
Mhm.
But it took me some time to really shift my head. And I would say probably my last month or so in the education space was my most powerful than all the 9 years that I had been there, because I finally saw myself as a leader instead of as that support role. So I do think that it's also important, within our business models when we're developing someone that has come up the ranks in the organization, that we're not just putting them in a role and then expecting them to fulfill the role, but that we're also giving them the right mindset so that they can step into that role fully, and change their own perception. So I applaud the young lady because she had to be able to say that. That took a lot of courage to do that.
She also had a bit of mentoring to get that far as well, because she came back and went, oh.
Yeah, because I'm sure she was jumping on the inside, absolutely jumping on the inside. But once you step into that space, then everyone else will begin to see you in that space. But it starts with us first. It starts up here first.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Oh, wow. So we're on the same page in so many things. And you were saying also about the leadership, back to the intention and what we say to ourselves, because we don't have to have leader or boss or some similar title to own that sense of leadership. And I believe that's part of the work that you do with women at different, I don't want to say rungs on the ladder, because there is a hierarchy, let's face it, but it doesn't matter where you sit on that. We all have our own personal leadership role. Tell us a bit more about your thoughts on that one.
Well, I totally agree about that. I think that every person has a domain of influence, and they have a certain level of leadership. I know that there's different schools of thought on that. Some people say, well, everybody can't be a leader, or certain ones have a leader. No, let's just clear the air really quick. The human family is built for leadership. We're engineered for leadership. I can't get into whether a person believes in evolution or creation. I don't have time for that part. But what I do know is that the human family was built out of love. And out of that love is that direct correlation of leadership, where we were made to have dominion, which is just essentially just authority and leadership over a particular area. It could be a particular area of gifting, or it could be in a particular area of industry. But we're made to be fruitful, which is to produce abundantly. We're made to multiply, which is to intensify. We're made to subdue, which is to bring into control or to gain mastery over. Or we're made to replenish, which is to supply fully or to reproduce the original. Every human being, man, woman, child, regardless male or female, or however you identify, we are built with those 5 levels of leadership, point blank, period. And so it's unfortunate, because I think that we have, as a human family, we have been conditioned in so many ways to make us feel so much lower than that. We're not automatically taught that. And even if from a faith-based perspective, we're not automatically taught that. In our school systems, we're not automatically taught that. is always trying to carve out, well, who are the leaders and who are the worker bees? When we have to understand that we all have leadership abilities. And even if you don't have the leadership role, you still bring that statelyhood of leadership to the role that you're working in. And so oftentimes I would just say, for me, one of my former leaders, she wanted to recommend a book to me about doing the work of a leader, even if you don't have the role. So oftentimes I found myself finding things outside of the scope of my employment where I absolutely led in because it was my innate ability. And so I became more so of an asset instead of an employee. And I was able to do things in different areas because I brought my leadership abilities. So I'm understanding that I'm very great at logistical organization. I can see a big picture and break it down into little pieces of details. I know how to create and bring people together behind a particular thing that I absolutely believe in. And so now that I'm starting to understand a little bit more about my makeup, and the more time that we spend with ourselves to really understand what our skills and our abilities are, the more that we can bring that to the work that we do. And if we can bring that to the work that we do, then it actually enables us to be more engaged to our employer and actually create some more loyalty if our employer gives us the room to bring our gifts. So it's great to have that job requirement, but we still have to be able to bring all of ourselves to the job, all of our leadership. So all of our leadership abilities doesn't look the same, but each and every last one of us, we have it. So that's how I feel.
We're leading ourselves, aren't we? Even if there's nobody else around, I'm still leading myself.
Absolutely.
How do I want to show up?
You need a title to do it.
I mean, how do I want to show up today? I'm in charge of that. Am I having an off day? Well, possibly, but hey, it's Monday morning. I'm getting on with it.
I'm getting it on.
Get stuff done.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether you have that in the States, but there's a big phrase in the US, in Australia, with regard to business called GSD, get stuff done, which is very close to our goods and services tax, GST. So you get stuff done in order to get your revenue as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, love it. So the leadership thing is really around every aspect of life, isn't it? Because I can then choose to be the leader of me in this situation. And then I show up at my best for my business, for my colleagues in corporate, wherever I happen to be, in the family, even any interaction. I'm showing up as my bestest me.
Absolutely.
Love it. On that note, you've got a couple of conferences. I mean, you've got a 3-part conference you were talking about. Now, I know we've missed part 1 because that was, what was it, April?
Yes, that was back in April.
Okay. And you've got part 2 coming in July. Now, at the point of recording, we are in July. However, I suspect that, well, I know the publication of this will go out a little bit later. But tell us about parts 2 and 3. We may bump you up the list to get this out just ahead of number 2. But tell us more about the conference that you've got going on.
Yes, so the conference is called Love, the Success Factor. So I do believe that love is our success factor. And we're really focusing in on how God's love empowers women to lead, to create, and to generate wealth in the fullness of our equality and in our purpose. So in part 1, we talked about, kind of laid that foundation about what love is, how love shows up, and how love shows up in leadership, and how that we are engineered for leadership, that we're made from love and that we're engineered from love. And in that is a demonstration or a display of what supreme leadership looks like. And every human being has that. So we laid that foundation. Coming into part 2, we're going to focus in on how that love is an equalizer and how love builds the capacity to create wealth. So as far as love is an equalizer, we're going to definitely just be focusing in on the girls, talking a little bit more about those power things, that innate leadership ability that women have, as well as talking about the dangers of not knowing who you are and sharing some practical resources on how to be able to understand more about your talent DNA, or how you perceive the world, how you make decisions, all of those things like that. So we're going to bring women back home to help remind them about the amazing leaders that they have always been. So we'll also be talking about how love builds the capacity to create wealth. And so in that, we're going to talk about how that women, we're basically motivated by who we love or what we love. And depending on who we love or what we love gives us the ability to create, which can also lead to creating a good or a service that will lead us into business. So that we'll talk about the extent of our creativity, and that we actually create from the source of our pleasure. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So part 3, and that's on July 22nd, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in Cisco WebEx. And I believe you have the information that you'll share with the audience.
It will be in the show notes. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so in part 3, we'll talk about how love unveils the woman I already am. And so this one talks about specifically about purpose development, that once you're exposed to your purpose, that there is a series, basically a season of purpose development to prepare you and to upskill you for your particular purpose. And so we're going to be focusing on that in part 3. So that's going to be pretty cool, and also providing some great practical resources as we share some inspirational insights.
Excellent. This is a virtual thing, an in-person thing?
Absolutely. And this will be on October the 26th. I apologize, October 28th, Saturday, October 28th.
Sure.
Virtually, Cisco WebEx, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. And so these are absolutely complimentary. So the audience can use the code LOVE2023, and they can visit at my website, teresakpage.squarespace.com.
We'll make sure all of that information is in the show notes. So just to clarify then, we've obviously missed part 1. We will aim to get this out for you ahead of part 2, but I can't promise. But definitely before part 3. Now, can you log into parts 2 and 3 without having logged one and done one?
Absolutely. And if there's also an opportunity for the audience, if they want to catch the recording, as well as the reference guide from part 1 to kind of catch up, they definitely can. But I know that I'll probably be giving a synopsis, because I may have, some of the audience from the last time as well as new audience. So we'll probably do a quick brush up, and so everybody feel like we can just keep driving and not miss anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that wonderful juiciness with us. Thank you, Teresa. Before we wrap up, you mentioned it earlier on. I'm very keen on internal scripts. What we say to ourselves is as important as what comes out of our mouths, because again, as we've spoken about, if this doesn't match this, then these will give you away, and your audience, whether they be one person or a group of people of an auditorium, are going to think, no, there's something I don't trust about you. There's that level of disconnect, there's that level of inauthenticity. So one of the things I ask all of our Quirky Inspiration guests is to share with us an empowering internal script, something that you go back to on a regular basis.
Well, that absolutely varies. It definitely varies. But one of the things, and you're probably going to think this is totally kind of
Don't preface it. No prejudice here. Let's have it.
Right. But yes. So growing up, I have always struggled with my self-esteem. I've always been, a chubby girl, whatever, still a plus size woman, but I'm beautiful. I feel like I'm beautiful. I'm healthy. I'm strong, and all of that. And also, moving forward in a life to be more healthy. That's always a goal of mine. But oftentimes, there are terrible thoughts that has plagued me over the years. And even now, as a full grown woman, some of those thoughts, even from when I was a little girl, try to come back, and they're more amplified, and they're a little darker and a little uglier. One of the things that has helped me lately, especially within the last year or so, is that I'll absolutely tell those thoughts out loud to shut up. Shut up. Like, not today. We are not going here today. And it's important for me to counter that particular thought with something positive. Or even if it is a mistake that I've made, I'm like, okay, we made the mistake. No big deal. It's not, the world didn't fall apart. Or, and one of the things I've also have, Miss Wendy, is that while I know that our emotions are designed to help us to interpret the world around us, and they're very important to us, I have also learned not to learn that our emotions are very fickle. And that they will get up and that they will leave us. And they will leave us in a lurch. They will do the dip. They will absolutely exit stage left, and leave us hanging sometimes. What I have found is that if I have a plan, if I have established a plan for myself, even when my emotions get up, or even when my thoughts are terrible and dark, if I have a plan, that I can stay true to the plan, even when my emotions don't trust it. But I can trust the plan. And I would just say, maybe to top it all off, is that the audience has to be convinced of their own greatness. So if we have to learn how to be convinced of our own greatness. So we have to be able to sit with ourselves and really be able to discover what it is that's great. Every single thing about you is great. The good, the bad, the ugly, because we need all of it to become the people that we're supposed to be. So I would just say, if anything, maybe that's the top of the list, is be convinced.
I am the greatest. Do you remember Muhammad Ali? I am the greatest. What a wonderfully empowering script. So when those little voices with the negative, in the disempowering scripts, come and sit on your shoulder, you can take them. I am the greatest.
I am the greatest.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, Teresa. That was lovely. We will pop all of your information in the show notes, where we can get hold of you on your socials, on your website. Looking forward to connecting again, because I know I'm getting a return visit. Thank you so much, Teresa. Love chatting with you. Thank you.
Oh, it's such an honor. Thank you. Thank you.